Hello, everyone. Let's create our project, our first project actually on NetBeans. Now, the first thing we can actually remove this start page. Just click on this file, and then here choose Java Web. Okay, choose Java Web, and then Web Application. Click Next. Now, I'm gonna name this as Week 3. Okay, and then say Next. Here, if you ask for a password, and click Next, then Finish. And here we go. Now, if I open the project here, okay, let me restore this. Okay, now as you can see, this is what you get by default is the web page, which is with index, which is going to be a default index. We can remove this, by the way, like if you want to add another text, for example, let's say H1, let's close it, and let's say here, hello from index.html. Now you can run this by clicking on this green button. And it's going to take some time for the first time. And click OK. And here we go. This is how we can create a project for the first time. And see you next video. Hello, everyone. Now, what we want to do actually, instead of having index.html, I want to have index.jsp. Okay, I need to have like, instead of having index.html, I want to have index.jsp. Now, the first thing that I want to do is removing this. If I remove this, and I say yes. Now, if I click on the green button, it gives me an error, and they say the request resources is not available because the default welcome file is index.html. Okay, the default file, like when you click the green button, the server go and look for index.html, and now is not available. Why it's not available? Because we have deleted that. Now, if you want to create a JSP file, just go here, say new, then say JSP. Now, if you don't find JSP here, you can find it here on the other and say filter, then say JSP, and you will find it here. Click, double click. Now, I'm going to name it index, but by the way, you can name it anything like SAIT, Ahmad, ABC, any name. Okay. Now, this is going to be index. And remember that we need this to be inside web information and click finish. Now, this is the file. Like here, I'm going to say hello world. I'm going to say from index.jsp and click save. Now, after I saved it, I'm going to run this. And here we go. We are still getting the same error. Why? We are still getting the same error because if we remember, I say the default file is index.html. Now, the file that I have created is index.jsp, and index.jsp is not the same as index.html. That means I need to create something that help me to render index.jsp. And we say that these files are not public files. Anything inside web information, if you need to read it, you need a servlet. That means we need to create a servlet, and then this servlet going to render index.jsp for me. Go to week 3 here, right click, say new, and say servlet. Now name the servlet any name that you want. I'm going to name this as, let's say, render servlet, like because I'm going to use this for rendering purpose. I'm going to name it render servlet. Again, anything that you need, name it, just click next. And here, make sure that you tick on this. This should be here. Yeah, you should actually evaluate this to have this add information to file descriptor. This is very important. And then here you have the URL patterns. And if you remember in the lecture, we did talk about this patterns things. For example, I can have a /home, I can have a /about, any path that you need to link. Like we're gonna say, if the browser is looking for /about, then call this servlet, render servlet. Now I'm gonna call this as a /home. Like anytime the browser look for /home, go please run render servlet. Okay, let's click finish. And here we go. Now the first time that you will see, and by the way, click on this plus as well. You will see a lot of generated code, and this is an auto-generated code. I don't need it. I just need two things, the doGet method and the doPost method. Anything other than that, I can delete it. Like you can delete this. And you can delete the comment here. And this as well. I'm going to delete up until the class, but don't delete the class, yeah? We need it. Here we go. Now, inside this method, I need to delete this as well. Inside do get and inside do post. Okay. And now if you scroll up, I have some comments. If you don't need it, just delete it. And you can delete this as well because we don't need it. Here we go. By the way, there is a way to like customize this auto-generated code. I will talk about that later, but let's now focus on the code. Now, the problem, like, why did we create render servlet? We created render servlet because we need to run index.jsp. Now, anytime that you are here, like if you are here, okay, if you are in a servlet, you can render a JSP file. Now, because we are going to be here in the servlet, let's render a JSP file. Now, how to render this? The code that I'm going to write is a boilerplate code. It's this code always going to be used the same. However, we just need to change the name of the file. Then the code is get servlet context, and then here dot get request dispatcher. And here you need to name the path. Where is your file exist? Our file exists inside web information, and then the name of the file is index.jsp. And then here you need to say forward and request response. That's all. Let me just take this down here. Yeah. This is every time that you want to go from a servlet to a JSP, you should say get servlet context, get request dispatcher, then you name the location of the file, and then dot forward request response. Okay. Now let's save it, and let's hope that's gonna run. Let's click on the green button. And we still have the same problem. Resource is not available. The problem that the only one that we need to solve right now is this. We need to go to web.xml and we need to tell web.xml that the welcome file is now being rendered using the servlet. Okay, the web.xml is still looking for index.jsp. I need to tell web.xml when you run, go to render servlet. Now, how to do that? In web.xml, you have here different options. If you don't have these options, go to view and say show editor toolbar. Okay, now here, go to pages, and here's the welcome files. Now here you need to have the path. Like, do you remember the path? For example, render servlet has a path called home, yeah? Like if you say home, you say home and say save, then what will happen actually is this. When you click the green button, they will open web.xml. They're going to find your welcome file. Your welcome file, you are saying, okay, I don't have a welcome file right now. I just have a path, and this path is home. They're going to do a GET request to render servlet. And in render servlet, they're going to go to the doGet method, and they're going to render this file. Let's run this right now. And here we go. We got this file, hello world from index.jsp. Now, in the next video, I will talk about how to have a form inside this page. Okay. Okay. Now, if we open this again, remember that how do we run this index.jsp? We actually have this welcome file list. When I click on the green button, they open web.xml file. And after that, they go to the welcome file list. They find this home, and home is not a file. Home is a pattern. And they say, okay, who's responsible for home? Is render servlet. Okay, render servlet. Where is render servlet? Okay. And remember, this green button gonna send a GET request, and we will do this here. This is how we actually were able to run index.jsp. Now, let's say here in index.jsp, I want to have a form. Okay, let's leave this here. Let's have a form. Okay, now inside this form, I'm gonna have an input. And this input is gonna have a type. This type, let's say, is a text. And it's gonna have a name. I'm gonna say it's a first name. And that's all. Now, remember that each form needs a button of type submit. And I'm gonna say submit. And yeah, that's very much. Now remember that the form need a method and need an action. Now the method, it could be post, and the action, I am gonna use action as home. Now, if you remember, home is linked with, if you go here to web.xml, remember that home is linked with render servlet. Okay, that means when I send this action, the home, it will go to render servlet. Now I have two methods, one do get and one do post. Which one will be run? It depends on the type of the method. Now the type of the method is post. That means I will go to here. Okay. Now let's, for example, I'm just gonna say system to print line. I'm gonna just say hello, just to make sure that if we are executing this or not. Let's save it and let's run the file. Now, as you can see, I have the form. I can write anything I want. Doesn't matter right now. Just say submit. Now, there is nothing happened. That's okay. No problem. Well, let's go here. Let's go to output and let's go to Apache Tomcat, this one here. As you can see, we are able to execute this, the do post method. Okay. I hope that you got the idea. Now, in the next video, I will show you how to read data from the form. Hey, now, let's say that I want to read the data that I'm going to enter here. Now, how to enter the data? Remember that this method actually has two parameters. The first parameter is a parameter called request and a parameter called response. Request actually will contain the data that is in the form. I can store it, for example, s.fn equal request dot get parameter. And now name the parameter. What's the name of the parameter? What's the name of the input? If we go to index.jsp, you can say the name of the input is first name. Yeah, the name of the input is first name. Like I can just copy paste it and add it here. Now this will actually read the data that comes from the request under the name first name. Okay. And now here I could system out this. Like this, just system out to print line. And I'm gonna say just this and then like just fn. Let's save it and let's run this. And here I'm going to say SAIT and submit. Okay, now there is nothing happening here, but if we go to the output, if we go to Apache Tomcat, the third one here, you would see if scroll down, keep scrolling. Here we go. I'm able to read the data. I can read the data from the server. There's no problem. Now, what I want to do is to send this data from this file, like from do post. Actually, I don't want to print it here. I want to create a dynamic web page called index, not index, I'm going to call it second.jsp. And this second.jsp will actually print this data, which is fn. Okay, like it's gonna, for example, if I say it, like second.jsp gonna say hello, then the name that I gonna pass to it. Now, this is gonna be in the next video. See you next video. Okay, now, as I said, now let's go to webenv here and let's create a new JSP file. And here, I'm going to name this as second. Or let's say, I'm going to say hello. Okay, this is called say hello file. Just finish. And I'm going to say here, like just a message right now. This is say hello.jsp. Okay, let's save everything. And let's go to the back to render. Now, instead of printing this data here, what I want to say that, remember that anytime that you are in a servlet and you want to go to a JSP, you can just copy this code and paste it here. However, this time I want to go to second.jsp. Now, still, I'm not sending the data. I'm going to send the data later, but let's just make sure that we are able to go to this page or not. Let's save it and let's run it. And now here, just like say it, for example, say submit. And here I'm getting a problem. Now the problem that they are saying this resource is not available. Let's see what we are doing here. You're saying second to JSP. Oh, I'm not second. It's say hello. It's a great. Okay, I was having a incorrect file name. It should be say hello, save it, and run it again. Say, for example, here, SAIT, and submit. And this is say hello to JSP. Like I was able to go from this servlet to post to this files. Now, okay, now how can I actually pass the data from first name? Like how can I just pass this variable to say hello? To do so, you should use request.set attribute. Request.set attribute. And now here, what's the name of like the key name or something like that? Like you can name it whatever you want. You can name it like data, you can name it FN, anything you want. It's just a name that imagine this as a variable name, and then here's the data that you will send. Okay. For example, I want to send this variable. I'm gonna say, okay, send it here. Now you want to use the same name, you can. You want to change like FN1234. This is just a name. I'm gonna go with the same name, like FN. Now let's save here and go to say hello to JSP. And here I'm gonna say to print the data. Let's use an H1. Okay, and here, for example, you send me, and let's print the data that I sent. Now to print, we're going to use something called expression language. And in the expression language, you need $sign, then 2 curly brackets. And inside it here, you should name the file name. Like what was the variable that we sent? It was FN. Okay, just name it FN. Now save it. And if we go here, like click on week 3, always like it's preferred actually to click on the name of the project and then click on the green button. And now here, I'm going to say SAIT and submit, and you sent me SAIT. That's great. Now let's close it. Let's say that I changed this name. Like for example, I named this FN123. Now what you should say here, you should say FN, then 123. Now save it. Let's go away week 3 and run this. Go here, say hello. No, let's say Ahmad. Say submit, and you send me Ahmad. Okay, I hope this makes sense right now. And this is very much everything that we need. And yeah, I will keep updating this as soon as I have time. Thank you.